From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxton Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Peters.
Here.
Supervisor Scrivener.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Good morning
Here.
and welcome to the Tuesday, March 15th, 2022 meeting of the Board of Supervisors, County of Kern. We're going to begin today's meeting with a flag salute, and Supervisor Mike Maggard is going to lead us in that. After the flag salute, if you would remain standing for a moment of prayer, silence, or meditation, whichever you prefer. Thank you. Please be seated. All right. So now I'm going to call on Nick Cullen, our Director of Animal Services, to introduce our Pet of the Week. Come on out, Nick. Who do we have today?
Good morning. We have Bonzi, is what we've called her. She's about a 4-year-old Shih Tzu mix. She's just one of those dogs that's an example. She came to us about a week ago, and she's just frightened of everything. And we think she's probably had some traumatic experiences prior to coming to us, and she's just learning to trust people again. And so anybody who's interested in adopting her, she's going to need some TLC, some slow and tender care. But she's a sweet dog once she gets to know you.
So she's adoption, not foster?
She will, for the right person, foster, adoption, whatever the case may be. We just want to get her out of the shelter.
All right.
She's a super sweet dog.
Well, let's do it. Let's get you out of there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.
Nick, she's not the only one with trust issues, I assure you. It's pretty common these days.
All right. We will begin by considering the consent agenda. I invite anyone who would like to follow along to grab one of the agendas that are located near the two entrances to the chambers. So all items listed with a CA above the item are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. And so I'll read the consent agenda now. So starting on page 2, items 1, 4, and 6, and 9 are on consent. On page 3, all items 10 through 16 are on consent. On page 4, we have 17 through 20 are on consent. On 21, this item has been withdrawn by the department and will not be considered, but 22 and 23 remain on consent. Page 5, we have items 25 through 30 are on consent, so item 24 is not. On page 6, 31 and then 33 through 37 are on consent. On page 7, we have all items 38 through 44 on consent. And finally, on page 8, 45 through 47 are on consent. So now I'll ask if there are any members of the public that would like to make any comment on the consent agenda. Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board.
I have a motion on consent.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Yeah, come on up. Good morning.
Good morning. Nadine Escalante here. Sorry, it's been a while.
We are concerned about item number 26. So when would some of us who are here about that item have a moment to bring that to your attention, our concerns?
Right now is your moment. Please let us know what your concerns are, and then the board will proceed accordingly.
Okay, my concern as a community member and also as a taxpayer to the county is why does the DA's office need $130,000 for a coordinator of administrative and legislative analysis, which my understanding from talking to people in this office is that this individual is somebody who actually works for her on her campaign, so the county would be paying somebody to help her work on her campaign. I don't appreciate, nor do my neighbors, appreciate our tax dollars from our houses to be used on paying her campaign. When you work for the district attorney's office, your job is to represent the cases that are affecting our community, not working on your campaign. That's what you do on your off time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Usidra Osby, and I am also here to speak on item number 26, opposing this addition of this position for the district attorney's office. And I agree with everything Ms. Escalante said. Our tax dollars should not be spent on someone's campaign, as well as this should have been an item that was budgeted during the time that the county budget was being considered and not after, and it should not be coming from the discretionary funds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, esteemed board members. My name is Andres Zuniga, and I'm a community advocate for all of us who are down here in Bakersfield. I'm also a reentry specialist. I'm here voicing my concern. I'm serving as a voice for our community. We're talking about adding an addition to an already powerful force, for our district attorney's office. In all actuality, incarceration force, because that's all we've been practicing here. What we should be talking about is alternatives. This hasn't been working. We have to look at what's been working. What's going to work? What other counties are doing? Let's start mirroring what's going on instead of adding to what hasn't been working. Decades. I'm not just talking about opinions or speculations. Let's look at the data. Let's step back and look at the data. Please hear our concerns. Please consider our concerns. Board members, I'm in awe at you even considering adding something to this powerful force already. Look at what's going on in our state, in our country. Come on, let's mirror something different. Let's follow somebody else's direction that's proven to be successful for everyone, for those who've been impacted. That means victims. That means families, not just criminals. We owe it to our community to do something different. Let's step back and say, hey, what's going on here in Kern County? Let's set aside the politics. Let's set aside the pride. Let's look at the real problem here. We have to stop crime here in Bakersfield. We have to do something to stop crime. Let's look at alternatives. Let's look at a rehabilitation. Let's look at what we owe our community. That's all. I'm sorry. I'm very passionate about this. I'm talking from a life experience. I can go on and on about reentry and the success of reentry. I'm a living example. Success for our communities, success for individuals that have been impacted. And I'm not talking about just criminals. I'm talking about victims. I'm talking about those that have been impacted. Those have been impacted by crime. That's what we're here for our community. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. Supervisor Perez?
Thank you, Zach. Appreciate you guys coming down and communicating your concerns here. Thank you. Ryan, I'm not entirely sure how we should proceed on this matter. I don't know if the district attorney is here and would like to come down and give an explanation as to what this request is, or if you can give us some direction. Ryan, as you can tell, the folks that have come down are folks that are from my community traditionally, or my district, or kind of serve my district, and so, I feel like I have to respond to this and not ignore it. But at the same time, we have department heads who do this on a regular basis and tends to be, within their purview. So, I'd like an opportunity for a civil discussion, that we can work through as a community here together. I see our district attorney has come down. Perhaps, Zach, maybe you can give us some direction, but certainly I can't ignore what members of my community are saying, but I think a discussion would be helpful. Your thoughts, Zach?
Thank you. Supervisor Perez, I think since you've obviously raised the question, our DA is here. Ms. Zimmer, would you like to comment?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Your board should consider pulling this item off consent so that you can facilitate a discussion on this.
Thank you. Let's allow Ms. Zimmer an opportunity to respond, and then we'll go from there.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. The County of Kern and many departments have public information officers. The CAO's office has a public information officer. The Sheriff's Department has a public information officer. The Department of Human Services. Social media has grown to a great extent. And when I became district attorney, needed a public information officer. We had no budget for one. So I had to have one of our assistant district attorney, who was doing many jobs as a lawyer, become our public information officer, do the legislative analysis of what was going on in Sacramento. There are laws coming at us nearly every session that, quite honestly, are soft on crime. We have to prepare for what is coming our way, and with a supermajority of Democratic legislators in Sacramento that usually vote in a certain way, it has had a tremendous effect on our office. We could have a full-time person do a Sacramento watch nearly every day, yet we still have to go to court and do everything that we're doing. It has come to the point for district attorneys' offices that we have to have someone watch the legislation of what's going on and do an analysis for us on how to prepare for this, and it's something that we should weigh in on, and also be able to tell our story to the public about cases that we file, convictions that we get, and that type of thing, and have interaction with the press. They call every day, all day long, and we have an attorney paying attorney wages handling this job. We thought it was more economical to have a public information officer paying at a much lower wage to be able to do something like that, and we could let our lawyer go back to the work that he does, and that's lawyer work. So, and also...
Anyone speaking from the audience right now, respectfully, do not comment while we have someone speaking.
So we thought we would make this proposal to hire someone. Now, who it's going to be is going to go through county HR. The county is going to put out, if this is approved, it's not something that I will necessarily pick. It has to go through a process. And so anyone that's eligible and wants the job can apply if they're qualified. So we thought we'd give it a try with an extra help employee. It worked out very well, was able to take a tremendous burden off us, and we'd like to make it a permanent position. So thank you for letting me comment on this, and I appreciate it.
Can I ask a question, Zach?
Of course.
Thank you.
Supervisor
Thank you
Perez.
to our district attorney for your explanation and for letting this community know why you're interested in this position. Elected officials are in a different position than other department heads, and they have some discretion and freedom that is outside of the purview of this board. I know that is not helpful in helping you get to being okay with what may or may not occur here, but that is a reality for us. I'd ask our county council, do you see a problem with this particular direction? I'm sure you've already reviewed it, but in light of the questions that are being raised here, and in light of the reality that our district attorney is an elected official and has certain confidential staff members, frankly, the way that all 10 elected countywide officials have in this community, can you help shed some light here? and give us just, a way to think about these issues because they are complicated and nuanced.
Supervisor Perez, through the chair, if I may first, because this matter is still just being talked about in relation to whether to keep it on the consent agenda or not, the process that your board has implemented is that a member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board. Before this gets into too much more discussion and decisions being made, I would suggest that it be removed from the consent agenda and taken up for discussion in its sequence on the agenda.
Okay, I see Kathy nodding in the affirmative that that's what we should do. I think our district attorney is more than capable of handling this matter in its listed sequence, and of course, members of the community want to be heard as well. I don't think that we have much of a choice, Cindy, and so I think we need to move in that direction.
Okay, so that is a request from Supervisor Perez to remove item 26. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? Okay. Okay, any other comments on the consent agenda? I think we have a motion and a second. Is that correct? Okay, please cast your votes.
Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. Okay, so that will take us back to, we will take up item 26 in sequence as we just indicated. That takes us back to page 2, and so our next item is item 2, which is to proclaim March 2022 as American Red Cross Month in Kern County, and Supervisor Peters will make this presentation. Need a motion.
Thank you, Chairman Scrivener. I'd like to make a motion on this item.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Please cast your votes.
Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Good morning, Honorable Chairman, members of the board. It's hard to overstate the importance of the Red Cross. We've seen time and again, both around the world, like we're seeing right now in Ukraine, like we've seen countless times in our own backyard, how crucial the relief and the aid that they provide to our communities is. And so it's my honor today to be able to present this proclamation declaring March 2022 as American Red Cross Month in Kern County. It has been entered into our board minutes and signed by our Honorable Chairman, Zach Scrivener. I wanted to share a few notes about our local Red Cross without going too long over any other comments that would be made, but our local Red Cross for Kern County and Eastern Sierra is actually one of the 4 oldest branches of the Red Cross in California. It's been serving our communities for over 100 years. And Director Zamora is with us here today. I actually met him last year during the French fire when they were there providing aid to our communities in the Kern River Valley. And I just am really honored today to be able to recognize him and his team's efforts and hard work to provide relief for our communities when they're in their time of greatest need. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely very appreciative of of Chairman Scrivener and the rest of the Kern County Board of Supervisors for allowing us this opportunity and for proclaiming March as Red Cross Month. And just as was stated, yes, we are the 4th oldest Red Cross chapter in California. So the great history that we have here, built upon the foundation of amazing volunteers and generous supporters that have carried out the mission to alleviate human suffering in the face of disasters, whether large or small. Not to mention also the work with service to armed forces that we do, biomed through the collection of blood, and any other type of disaster preparedness. The Red Cross Kern chapter has been here for the community of Kern County since through disasters such as the earthquakes in 1952 and 2019, the dust storm in 1977, mudslides of 2015, and wildfires such as Erskine and French fires. Again, Red Cross volunteers gather to help people during some of their darkest times and provide emergency shelter, food, and comfort to families devastated. One other area that I think sometimes is not known is the work that goes on almost on a daily basis to respond to those that have experienced a home fire. Red Cross volunteers are available day and night, each day of the year to respond and help support financially those that are affected, to help them find support, to help them find housing and food and get what they need, in addition to medications, mental health, and spiritual care. I would urge each and every single one of you that do not have a home or smoke alarm in your home to please go to endhomefires.org to request a free smoke alarm and education. Just to recap on something that I don't know everyone knows about is there's actually been documented lives saved here in Kern County due to our home fire campaign, where volunteers would go canvassing a neighborhood to install smoke alarms free of charge. And actually, back in 2019, there was a fire in Bakersfield. There were smoke alarms installed, and there was a total of 6 people that lived in the household. And out of those 6, there were 4 youth that were saved and alerted to the fire due to American Red Cross and our partners installing smoke alarms. In addition to that, in Weldon, California in 2020, there was a fire as well, and 5 lives were saved, and 1 youth was included in that. So again, thank you for the generous support. Thank you for those dedicated volunteers that come out each and every day, and I have the pleasure of being able to see how amazing they are, how much time they take away from their family just because they want to help and be there for people. So again, thank you. I would encourage everyone to go to endhomefires.org to get some information on disaster preparedness. And then if you know of anyone that needs a smoke alarm, please sign up there. Again, there's so much more that the Red Cross does, but I only have a few minutes. So again, thank you for this opportunity. And I also wanted to recognize some of the board members that are here, Carolyn Forrester and Mitchell Patel as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the amazing work that you do. It's very important. Thank you. Next is item 3. This is to proclaim March 28th through April 1st, 2022 as Adult Education Week in Kern County, and Supervisor Maggard will make this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion on proclamation.
Second.
You have a motion.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes when Supervisor Peters makes it to the dais. There we go.
Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Colleagues, it is my pleasure to rise and come before you this morning to help us recognize March 28th through April 1 as Adult Education Week in Kern County. I am joined by Jody Leffler. This is probably the 15th time we've done this together, maybe 14th time. The only time we haven't done it together is when we've been closed for COVID, so it's been an annual thing that we've done since I've been here. But I am very pleased to do that this morning. The Adult Education Week will celebrate, she'll tell you more about this, but we'll celebrate many efforts that we have in our community to help adults get an education sometimes in a creative and different way. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about 1600. There's a great restaurant that you can go and students prepare your food for you, and it's a fun event to do and to be there to experience that. I know that they want to thank Jim Zervis and Teresa Hitchcock for their help in helping to fund and prepare and remodel the kitchens and things like that. So the county's been a partner in this for a while. But I'll let you speak about that. Jody, so you can fill in the blanks for us. But let me just read the proclamation. The Board of Supervisors of the County of Kern, State of California, has officially proclaimed March 28 through April 1 as Adult Education Week in Kern County, and it's evidenced by its recognition having been entered into our board minutes on this, the 15th day of March 2022, by our Chairman, the Honorable Zach Scrivener. So there you go. Thank you for your good work. And tell us a little bit more about what's going to happen during the week.
Sure. I'd like to thank the board and the county's support for our adult education programs. One of the newest programs that you may remember, Teresa Hitchcock being here, was the Recycling Lives program, where we're recycling glass and we're working with AB 109 students as well as homeless students to help them with paid work experience and develop themselves with an individual professional plan to get them back in the workforce. So we have many long-lasting relationships within the county. One of them, Supervisor Maggard spoke of the 1600 Cafe, where we're located in the America's Job Center with the help of Teresa Hitchcock and many supporters like Jim Service. He's also helped us with the remodeling so that we could be more COVID-friendly and continue to serve students from disadvantaged backgrounds. We know that when we teach the parent, we teach the child. So the work that we do, we feel like is very impactful, and we appreciate the support of the county.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
Oh, I will also just want to say really quick, we appreciate the support of the jail education program as well. We have a new lieutenant, Alex Garcia, who's very supportive of adult education and rehabilitating the clients at Laredo. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Good to see you.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you. Next is item 5. This is a certificate of recognition to Camilla Chavez from the Dolores Huerta Foundation in honor of receiving the James Irving Foundation Leadership Award, and Supervisor Perez will make this presentation.
Good to see you. Hello. Oh, wow, this is sweet. Come on over. Let's, the camera will catch all of us around here, so I think that's always nice. Come on over, surround me here if you don't mind. Oh, you look so nice. Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Nice. Okay. Chairman, thank you so much for your indulgence, and colleagues, thank you for your attention. This is a very special moment for Kern County, a very special moment for me, so thank you. Each year, the James Irvine Foundation Leadership Awards recognizes individuals and organizations that are confronting the state's critical challenges with innovative and effective solutions that improve people's lives and contribute to a better California. The foundation spotlights these exemplary individuals and their work to advance solutions that merit expansion, replication, or consideration from policymakers. It provides each recipient's organization with a grant of $250,000 and helps recipients share their approaches with policymakers and practitioners. This year, the award has been granted to our very own Camilla Chavez of the Dolores Huerta Foundation. Camilla Chavez is the co-founder and executive director of the Dolores Huerta Foundation, DHF. From the DHF headquarters in Bakersfield, Ms. Chavez oversees the strategic direction of this organization that seeks to empower historically disenfranchised communities with the training and skills to make transformational changes in their communities. Camilla has led the evolution of this organization from its infancy, seeded with a mere $100,000 from the Puffin Nation Prize for Creative Citizenship awarded to Dolores Huerta in 2003. Remember that? To an established anchor organization with a $5 million operating budget and over 40 full-time staff members and 100 seasonal canvassers. Under her leadership, DHF has increased political representation of communities of color, addressed voting and education inequities, and has secured millions of dollars for neighborhood improvements such as sidewalks, gutters, streetlights, neighborhood parks, swimming pools, and school campus renovations. The good stuff. Vecinos Unidos, Neighbors United leaders were at the forefront of these campaigns to improve the quality of life in their communities, a model in which you have created. This model of community empowerment, has led to many significant victories in her tenure, including the establishment of over 12 DHF grassroots community organizations throughout California's Central Valley and the development of a youth leadership program. Most recently, the Dolores Huerta Foundation was allocated $15 million, which is part of a capital campaign to establish the Dolores Huerta Peace and Justice Cultural Center in Bakersfield. It will be, Chairman, an international draw for tourism and thinkers all around the world. Very exciting. Camilla's leadership has been recognized by the Community Action Partnership of Kern County's Humanitarian of the Year Award 2019 and the League of Women Voters Carrie Cat Award in 2018. The DHF received the Foundation of the Year Award by Governor Jerry Brown in 2018. Camilla is the Vice Chair of California Calls, President of the Central Valley Partnership, and sits on the following boards: Inner City Struggle, Planned Parenthood, Marmonte Advocates, and Planned Parenthood PAC. Her lifelong commitment to social justice is rooted in the example she was given growing up in La Paz, Zach, your neck of the woods, the headquarters of the farm worker movement, now the National Chavez Center. Her mother, Dolores Huerta, and my dear friend, her father, Richard Chavez, instilled these ideas of nonviolence, selfless motivation, and personal responsibility that were reinforced through the actions of people like her tío, Cesar Chavez. After earning her BA in early childhood education from Mills College and a short career in public health, she returned to Kern County, her home, where she belongs, where she has spent the last 18 years. Camilla is proud to call the Central Valley home, enjoys hiking, traveling, a lot of dancing, and spending quality time with her husband and beautiful children. Camilla, it is a personal honor and privilege of mine, one that is unparalleled, to recognize you today on behalf of my colleagues, my chairman, Camilla Chavez, Dolores Huerta Foundation, in honor of receiving the James Irvine Foundation Leadership Award, and for continued dedication to serving our communities most in need, and for exemplary public service and civic contributions to the beautiful community of Kern County. We thank you today and honor you.
Thank you so much.
The floor is yours, Camilla.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Perez. Good morning, Supervisors. I am honored to receive this recognition. The Irvine Foundation selected leaders. I am one of 7 leaders throughout this state for demonstrating innovation, effectiveness, and inclusiveness. I share this recognition with my coworkers, my esteemed colleagues who work so hard every day. And I want to take a moment to highlight some of our accomplishments. Despite the onset of the pandemic, we galvanized volunteers to reach 84,000 people throughout the Central Valley to engage in the 2020 census. In the last 2 years, DHF has hosted 93 food banks, serving 450,000 pounds of food to 13,000 families. As of this month, we have co-hosted 80 vaccination clinics, administering 6,800 doses in partnership with United Against COVID Coalition. The pandemic is not over. We continue to serve the most impacted communities. Latinos made up 47.8% of COVID cases, as compared to just 24% of white people. While the pandemic is receding, with our increased vaccination efforts, the gap for Latino communities and people of color continues to widen. Latinos and people of color are the majority of Kern County, so we all have our work cut out for us. We look forward to partnering with the county as we did with the 2020 census campaign. And we can do this with the American Rescue Plan funding designated for recovery efforts. For those that don't know, ARPA funds include arts, culture, tourism, broadband access, education, human services, public health response, roads and infrastructure, and water infrastructure. I hope that DHF and other community advocates can work with this board in designating the best use of ARPA funds for our COVID community relief efforts. So on behalf of the Dolores Huerta Foundation Board, our staff, the Vecinos Unidos, Neighbors United members, I thank you for this recognition.
Congratulations. You guys can make amendments for you. Yeah, you want the phone? Come on in, squeeze in. And then,
One, two.
congratulations. Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
And
you, board.
Thank you, Supervisor, and congratulations. Next is item 7, public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. And so I want to ask anyone who would like to make a public presentation to please come forward, state your name, and please observe our 2-minute time limit. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Gary Simmons. I'm a resident, obviously, of Kern County, Bakersfield, California, since 1971. But I wasn't born in 71, I moved here, in case you're wondering. We've been listening, our community, our Stockdale Community Action Committee has been listening intently to the situation we have here with voter integrity, possible voter fraud. We've been listening very intently. We're forming a committee so that we can address these issues with the department head. We understand your position, trying to determine who manages this person, who manages this system. For your assistance, for your help, I've been a management consultant for 38 years. I work with public companies, I work with billionaires, and I have clients in 46 states. I can see systematic failure. We do have systematic failure, but we have organic failure also. We have a very inefficient operating system. We have very inefficient organic operating systems, and we have very inefficient leadership. This is a breakdown from the top all the way through the volunteers that help this situation. We're forming a committee, and we will be very, very involved with you. We're going to ask for your attendance. We're going to ask for your assistance, and we're going to audit the system. And we're going to make recommendations for the system, hopefully long before our next voting session. So here we are. I'm letting you know that we are very disappointed in our community, and we have to take community action, and we have to get you involved to do it. We're very capable, we're very qualified. We are disappointed that we have 2-minute time limits, and we're told our time's over. We're on 2-minute term limits, and we have this lady that runs this organization speak forever on a false and misleading presentation about how polished her organization is, whether it be computer systems, whether it be organic, whether it be her staff. That was a disappointment to allow that false and misleading statement. The defendant took the stand to defend her position.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons.
We'll be visiting again. Thank you for your listening. Bye.
Thank you. Who'll be next, please? Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Terry Maxwell, and I'm here to talk about election integrity also. I was a little surprised. Well, first of all, I want to thank the board for having an interest in doing something about the obvious problems we have with our elections, and there seems to be some appetite for separating out the positions of the auditor controller and the county clerk register of voters. Unfortunately, the county council lets you know that you can't do that till 2026. I'll remind a few of you that I did sit down with you like 4 or 5 months ago and talked about this, and at those meetings I did point out that the positions had been brought together by a resolution in 1994, and the question was, can they be taken away by a resolution here today? It seems surprising that only 2 weeks ago you found out the answer to that question, when 5 months ago was when it was posed, and you were then told it was too late to do anything about it. That's a big disappointment. And I think that you probably should be at least getting a second opinion. I know we pay our county council a lot of money every year to give you advice, but I think this is a situation where you really should be looking at someone else to give you an advice also, somebody that is maybe working for a legal firm that doesn't have any dog in the fight. Now, the other thing I will remind you that your county council did tell you was that you can hold an election and let the people decide this. And I didn't hear a date as to when you could or could not do that. I would propose that you consider in the general election putting on the ballot and letting the people decide if they would like to see the register of voters sliced off from the responsibility of the other 3 positions and a new division created that would answer the questions and solve the problems with our elections. That was something, and you might ask your county council if that also has a expiration date on it, and we already passed that point. Doesn't seem like we are, because that was what was proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. County council, could you respond to that? Because I have to say that was my assumption, that either course of action, either a action from the board or something we would put on the ballot wouldn't have any effect until a 2026 timeline.
Supervisor Scrivener, the issue that could be placed on the ballot, and I have not done research on that topic for today, the board could vote to put a ballot measure on an election to make the county clerk's office an appointed position.
Right, but I think that the question is, with the fact that the filing date is started actually closed as of Friday, I believe, for that office, would it have any effect before 2026?
Oh, I understand. If you were to, and again, I'm not sure of the deadlines for putting a ballot measure on, but if you were able to put a ballot measure on for the next election, asking the voters should the office of the county clerk become an appointed one, that would not become effective if it were to pass. The actual implementation of it and making that office an appointed position would not happen until the next election.
Thank you. Okay, Terry, come on up.
Yeah. She said appointed, not elected.
Right.
If you have the election to separate that out, from my understanding, once you have that election, you then have to implement it with due process, that you don't have to wait 4 years, because that would mean that almost every position you've ever appointed or created would have a 4-year stipulation on it.
Mr. Maxwell, what I would invite you to do is to email county council and have that dialogue. I think she would be willing to do that, because I think that I felt like the questions were answered as far as that timeline was concerned. But if you have additional questions, I think that you could email Ms. Rezon and we can continue to flesh that out.
And I would CC the board on any communication that I have with her, so that you'd be in the loop.
Ms. Rezon, is that acceptable? Okay, great. So she has her contact info for you right there. Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. I'm Vince Mayoko, the president of the Taft Republican Assembly, and I want to continue discussion on the splitting of the ROV from the auditor, controller, county clerk position. I have been in contact with an attorney from a prominent law firm in Sacramento. They are one of the leading election law firms in California and the entire country. This attorney gave me some information and suggestions. He told me since there is still time to split the county clerk ROV from the auditor controller position. With a Board of Supervisors ordinance, the auditor, controller, county clerk position, elected position, will appear on the June primary election ballot and could be worded as such. This position will be split in January 2023, and the county clerk ROV beginning in 2023 will no longer be linked with the auditor, controller elected position. He also told me that this wording were to take place before election materials went to print this spring, then everything should be totally legal. This attorney also told me that he believes this is more of a political issue than a legal issue. If this were to happen, then the November general election could be used as a way to elect the newly Kern County Clerk ROV position. If the winner of this election did not have at least 50% plus one vote, then a special runoff election could take place, let's say in December. Obviously, if the winner were to receive more than 50% plus one of the vote, no runoff would be needed. Ms. Raison mentioned in previous meetings that we've been to that this position cannot be split at this moment in time because it disenfranchises the position of the candidates who are running for this position. I am far more concerned about the disenfranchisement of the 450,000 Kern County voters than several potential candidates for this position. It was also mentioned that this wasn't going to take place until 2026. This gives a totally new meaning to the term kicking the can down the road. Lastly, opponents of this split may say that it's not financially responsible to create an added position. However, I truly believe you cannot put a price tag on voter confidence and election integrity. Once again, Board of Supervisors, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And I would extend the same invitation to you, Mr. Maiko, to email County Council with anything that the attorney that you're speaking with would like to, and I know that she would respond to that. So thank you. Next speaker. Good morning.
Morning, Chairman Scrivener, Board of Supervisor. My name is Tom Pavich. I am with the Election Integrity Project California. I'm the Kern County Coordinator. Our organization is nonprofit, nonpartisan. We've trained over 14,000 volunteers in the state of California. The organization has been in existence for over 10 years. In the last election, the gubernatorial recall election, that was a statewide election. And state election law states that election records be maintained for 6 months. It's unique in that it's a state election and not a federal election. If there's a federal office on the election, it's a 22-month period. I submitted a letter to the Registrar Mary Bedard on Friday asking her to preserve the records beyond the 6-month period in light of all of the irregularities that were discovered in the last election, several thousand, close to 4,000 irregularities statewide in that election, and we have several hundred here in Kern County as documented by penalty of perjury and affidavits by our volunteers. So with that, I would like the Board of Supervisors, I did copy each of you on this letter of Friday, to support the registrar to retain those records, and I would encourage the transparency of reviewing these records in the future, and I would even go to the effect to suggest a unique idea of a one-day open house, a show and tell, if you will, that we have at the registrar's office, so that you, the Board of Supervisors, can witness what our volunteers witnessed, many irregularities in signature verification. I'd like you to see it with your own eyes. You could open it to the public, citizen organizations, and to the press. So with that, I will close and ask if there are any questions or comments regarding my letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pavich. I want to ask either our clerk of the board or county council if they are aware of the correspondence and if we've received any indication from Ms. Bedard's office on how they will handle those records.
Mr. Chairman, I have received multiple letters. They all seem to be very similar in content. I've distributed those to all 5 board members, County Council, CAO, and Auditor Controller County Clerk Mary Bedard. I have not spoken with her concerning this correspondence, but it's all been referred to her. I don't know if County Council has anything to add.
Ms. Rezon?
Thank you, Supervisor Scrivener, board members. I spoke very briefly yesterday morning with Ms. Bedard. We talked about it in general terms. She was going to review the letter that is referred to from the Secretary of State. I said I would also look into it. She said that she keeps things for 22 months because that's what's required for federal elections. And then we talked about the differences between federal and state, but have not reached a conclusion as to what the state requirements are. So right now, there's not a clear direction, I believe, from Mrs. Bedard, but I will continue to work with her and address that matter.
Okay, so I think that Mr. Pavich deserves an answer on it at some point, and so can we make sure that you're connected with him with contact information, so once Ms. Bedard does reach the conclusion on the retention of those records, that he'll be notified?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
My address and email are on my letter.
Thank you. I assumed, but I just want to make sure we have it. Okay, next speaker, please.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask
Yeah, Supervisor Couch, thank you.
Thank you. Can we express our opinion? I mean, I think it would look very bad if for some reason those election documents were destroyed or whatever they do with them. Can we express our opinion to Ms. Bedard that we would like her to maintain those records longer than the 6 months? I know you said she typically retains them for 22 months, but I'd like us to be able to do that if we could.
Supervisor Couch, through the chair, I think that's your prerogative to do that.
Well, I will do it personally and individually, but I'll leave it to the board if they'd like to do it collectively. Thank you.
And if I could, I've pulled up the one code section that I took a quick look at, this is a preliminary assessment, and I'd like to make sure that's understood. While she maintains things for 22 months typically, because that is what's required for federal elections, there's a California Elections Code that says the elections official shall have the packages destroyed or recycled at the 6 months. So the question is it discretionary for her to hold on to something longer? And that's what needs to be reviewed and analyzed to mesh that up with the California Elections Code.
Can I ask how much time is left on the 6-month clock then, as of today, roughly?
The election was on September 14th, I believe. She hasn't destroyed anything yet.
Then I'm going to suggest we probably need to speak with her again and request that I guess I'm requesting she not do something that's what's the penalty if she doesn't destroy them?
As I said, I haven't dug deep.
Okay.
I'm going to ask our member of the public if they might step aside, because Ms. Bedard has just joined us, and so we'll get some clarification. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It is my intention, it has been my intention to retain the documents from the recall election in the same manner as we would retain them in a federal election, which would be the full 22 months. So that is what we are planning to do, is to keep the records in the same manner as a federal election.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Supervisor Couch or any other members of the board? Okay. I know Supervisor, Perez, did you? I did, but I'm okay. Okay, all right. Asked and answered. Ma'am, would you like to come back up? I know you were next. Thank you for allowing Ms. Bedard to give her comments. Good morning.
Hi, Jamie Anderson again. When I was here on March 1st, I failed to mention the fact that half of the employees with Exact were not registered voters. They had to complete voter registrations that day. I watched it personally, and I would swear to that under oath. In addition, we did a little more digging with Exact, and just a quick sampling, 5 of their employees are not registered to vote in Kern County. I would like to have the opportunity to audit the recall. There's too many irregular, lot of strange, unusual things, too many provisional ballots, and I think we need to get to the bottom of it. Why were there so many provisional ballots in this particular recall and not in our past elections? And I sent an email, and Mr. Maggard, I have not gotten a response back from you as far as the invoice I sent you. I don't know if you investigated any further. I spoke with your assistant, Michael, and I have not heard back.
Can I speak to that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, thank you.
You asked a wide array of questions. Ms. Raison, our county counsel, thoroughly investigated and looked into the matter. I had hoped to be able to send you some kind of a response, but frankly, your comments were so wide-ranging that I couldn't come up with a way to do it. You know, it would have been a book that I would have written back to you, and I don't think that's the appropriate thing to do. So, do you have any recollection, Ms. Raison, this morning of what your thoughts were about looking into whether or not the temporary company was employing people that were not qualified to do the work they were employed to do?
Supervisor Maggard, through the chair, what I did discover in looking at some of the questions that, or the statements that Ms. Anderson had posed, is that Exact staff has corporate headquarters in Calabasas, but they have a local Bakersfield office. They employ local staff, so it is not an out-of-county business. Also, while according to Mrs. Bedard, the preference is that poll workers be registered to vote in the county of Kern. That is not a state requirement. So as long as somebody is registered to vote within the state of California, that satisfies the requirements. Or there are other exceptions to being registered to vote, such if you are would be eligible to vote, but for citizenship status, or because there's a special program that allows high school students to work in elections. The temp agencies and the elections division uses a number of temp agencies for each election. Part of their responsibility is to inquire as to whether the temporary workers are registered voters. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and so when the volunteers show up, they are asked if they are registered to vote, and if not, are handed the provisional registration. I also understand that a number of the names on the invoice that she put an asterisk next to didn't work as poll workers. They worked in the warehouse or in other capacities within the election division through the campaign season. Those are the ones that come immediately to mind.
And those other positions that did not work in the election proper would not have been required to be registered to vote, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. There's a few of the answers, but not all the ones that you asked, I'm sure.
For the sake of argument, on my invoice, I'm listed as customer service. So I don't know that I trust warehouse, office assistant. And one of the gentlemen, as I stated on March 1st, told me he was from Los Angeles. So why are people from LA working in our elections? It just doesn't seem appropriate. We need an audit, period. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Good morning.
Paul Infesti, long-term Kern County resident and Supervisor District 3 representing. I just wanted to point out that there was, we keep hearing about the Election Integrity Project, which we've heard a number of people mention last time and today. And I just wanted to say that there was an excellent investigative article in the Los Angeles Times which has debunked a lot of the, as far as some of the accusations that were made. They also talk about how the Election Integrity Project has caused disruptions at the polls, sometimes intimidating voters, according to the election logs, emails, and records that have been filed in federal court. So I just want to say that it's not exactly a neutral group. This is actually called one of the, they've also demonstrated that this is part of a group who promote unproven and often false claims of voter fraud in California. And they did spearhead a major new effort for the recall vote. This was an article in the LA Times that came up before the recall election. So I just wanted to say that there are differences of opinion as to what we're hearing today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Dennis McLean. Good morning, board members. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm here to disagree with Mary Bedard's comments on our county's election integrity. We have previously heard from numerous poll watchers, myself included, how much confusion and corruption took place during the last recall election. Ms. Bedard's presentation expressed no compassion for our county voters. She stated if Trump won in this county, the election must be valid and should not be questioned. Go figure. Her arrogant demeanor did not represent an elected official well. If 14,000 votes in this county weren't questioned during the last election, somebody should be held accountable for that blunder. I feel she should resign from this position. We must stop this mail-in ballot scam and go back to voting sites with paper ballots and ID requirements. We must also get rid of the Dominion machines. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello again, Nadine Escalante, not on the election issue. Okay, back to the issue with DA Zimmer. I would first like to point out to the community members
Ms. Escalante,
Yes.
Respectfully, we're going to take that item up in listed sequence.
Okay.
And so, since it's on the agenda,
will be,
let's comment then.
Okay.
Versus now, which are for items not on the agenda.
Okay,
Thank you.
we were just unclear. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public speakers? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to item 8, which is board member announcements or reports. And as we have been doing traditionally, I'll ask on behalf of the Ad Hoc Committee on our COVID-19 response for Bryn Kerrigan, our Director of Public Health, to come forward and give us a report. And then we'll go to the board members. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As of yesterday, our case rate was 7.5 per 100,000 people. 2 weeks ago, it was 21.1. As of yesterday, we had 56 hospitalizations and 13 ICU patients. 15% of Kern's ICU beds are filled with COVID-19 patients. Kern's ICU capacity is 22.3%. On February 25th, CDC updated its framework to monitor the level of COVID-19 in communities. This framework determines whether the level of COVID-19 and severe disease in the community are low, medium, or high. At my last report to your board, CDC had classified Kern County as high level. On March 10th, Kern's community level was reduced to medium. The state's modeling software suggests that Kern's cases and hospitalizations will continually slowly decrease for the foreseeable future with no currently predicted future surges. 62.3% of Kern's 5 and older population is at least partially vaccinated, and 55.6% have been fully vaccinated. 41% of our fully vaccinated population is boosted. Since January 21st, 2021, 78.52% of Kern's cases, 85.28% of our COVID positive hospitalizations, and 91% of our COVID-19 related deaths have been in those who are unvaccinated. Mr. Chairman, you asked at my last presentation what the state data looked like when it came to reinfection rates. We were not able to locate any state-level public-facing data on this topic. However, there was a study recently published on this topic using cohorts from California and New York looking at cases from May through November 2021. The study looked at 4 different cohorts of adults. The first is unvaccinated with no previous confirmed COVID-19 diagnosis. The second is vaccinated with no previous COVID-19 diagnosis. The third is unvaccinated with a previous COVID-19 diagnosis. And the final is vaccinated with a previous COVID-19 diagnosis. Throughout the entire study period, COVID-19 incidence was the highest among unvaccinated persons without a previous COVID-19 diagnosis when compared to the other 3 groups. The results of the study demonstrated that vaccination protects against COVID-19 and related hospitalization, and that surviving a previous COVID-19 infection prevents against reinfection and related hospitalization. The study also revealed that infection-derived protection was higher after the Delta variant became predominant, a time when vaccine-induced immunity for many people declined because of immune evasion and waning immunity. The results of this study mirror what we have seen locally. There have been 7,744 identified cases of COVID-19 reinfection. 3.32% of Kern's population that has had COVID-19 has been reinfected. 0.05% have been hospitalized with their second case of COVID-19, and less than 0.005% of the population has died with a COVID reinfection. Supervisor Couch, during my last presentation, you requested that our epidemiologist provide her opinion on this slide. Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I'd like to invite Kim Hernandez, Division Director of Health Services, to provide your board a response.
Absolutely, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Supervisor Couch, through the chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this morning. The study Ms. Kerrigan just described does indeed show that completing a COVID-19 vaccination series and surviving a COVID-19 infection does provide protection against a second infection and severe illness associated with a second infection. Persons who were both vaccinated and had had a previous COVID-19 infection had the lowest risk, which is why even those who have had a previous COVID-19 infection are recommended to get vaccinated against COVID-19. It is important to remember that this study is defined vaccinated as having completed a primary series of an FDA-authorized or approved COVID-19 vaccine. What that study did not account for is whether or not people had been boosted. I'd like to present to you some of our local data about reinfections, post-vaccination infections, and post-boosted infections. We have it up on the slide, and I believe you have a copy of it before you. As you can see here, the proportion of persons who had a COVID-19 infection after completing a vaccination series and getting boosted is just under 3%. The proportion of people with a reinfection was about 3.33%. The proportion of people who were boosted who were hospitalized was 0.05%, which is about the same as those with a previous infection. Fortunately, we've had fewer than 11 people who've lost their lives after a reinfection or post-booster infection due to COVID-19. Unfortunately, that means that we aren't able to compare that data well. The less than 0.005% and the less than 0.006% are based on that less than 11 out of the population. This slide indicates why it is so important for people to be boosted, especially during the Delta surge when we saw that vaccine-induced immunity was waning. However, what we see now, including information from the Omicron surge that we are coming out of now, is that being boosted does provide good protection. If you think your risk is equivalent to being boosted and previously infected, remember that those who have an opportunity to be reinfected have to survive their first infection. We know in our community that more than 2,000 people did not survive that first infection. Being vaccinated and boosted continues to be the safest way to protect yourself from severe illness and death due to COVID-19. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the board? Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if someone has been fortunate enough to survive COVID and they have never been inoculated against the disease, do we know how effective their natural immunity is after they have survived their initial infection or their second?
That's something that continues, Supervisor Maggard, through the chair. This is something that is continuing to be studied. Unfortunately, it is not studied as clearly as it is with vaccinations. There are a few studies that continue to be ongoing. It is something we continue to watch because we do not yet know how long that immunity lasts. We are pretty confident that those first 90 days, it is unlikely to get another infection, but over time, the number of people who remain immune against a second COVID-19 infection fluctuates pretty dramatically. So there isn't a hard, fast date or a number of months afterwards. It's something that we continue to study and will hopefully be able to continue to report on as we know more concrete information.
So do we have anything definitive that says that the protection from the vaccine lasts longer than does the protection from the natural antibodies somebody has if they survive the disease?
That also continues to be studied because we are continuing to go through the additional processes of evaluating vaccination immunity, that those studies have been ongoing since the early studies prior to FDA authorization, that there are studies that continue with those groups of people that we've been following now for 2 years, as well as others that are ongoing. So both of those comparisons are continuing to happen. We're continuing to collect, our local data to kind of take a look at it and see what is coming out at a state level, at a national level, as well as internationally.
So if someone has natural immunity because they survive the disease, it appears that there is such a push to be vaccinated that whether or not someone has natural immunity from having survived is not taken into account. They want everybody to have the shot that can take the shot. So do you see any provision for an exemption from some of the consequences, some of the freedoms, or I guess you could say, that people who get the shot are supposed to have? If they have natural immunity, do you see any effort to be able to give them the same standing, give them the same pass, so to speak? Are you seeing any evidence of that?
So if you're talking from sort of a procedural and policy standpoint, I don't have a lot to speak on that sense of what discussions are going on at a federal or state level. What we do see is that the level of immunity and sort of the length of immunity due to natural infection tends to vary widely depending on your original infection. People who have had a severe illness tend to have a longer lasting immune protection after that severe illness, versus people who have a milder illness may have a shorter duration of that immunity during post-infection. And so one of the difficulties with the concept of natural immunity is how much that varies. Versus sort of what we have seen and are able to study with vaccine-induced immunity is that it is a little bit more standardized, that we have identified that for the vast majority of people, their immunity lasts this long. We did see it wane after people were fully vaccinated, which is why we came to the conclusion that a booster is helpful and necessary to remain well protected, especially as we continue to have changes in the virus that causes COVID-19 and the variations. And so that is also something to take into account of looking at, was your infection in early 2020? Are you now more than a year out and 2 variants later? And is that immunity the same as if we were still dealing with with the original SARS-CoV-2 virus that was circulating in 2020. So there is a lot of study that's going on. There are a lot of variables that are taken into account. We are hopeful that we do see long-term immunity, both from natural infection and vaccination. But what we find in the studies that Ms. Kerrigan presented is that people who have had a previous infection are further protected by getting vaccinated. And so this is why we continue to encourage that everybody who is age and medically eligible be vaccinated against COVID-19 and be boosted when it is time for that boost.
Let me make it crystal clear. I'm not discouraging anybody from being vaccinated. I think that's the prudent thing to do. But the state has certain rules that they are promulgating. And for example, if you want to attend a game, a basketball game at Cal State University Bakersfield, the state rules apply. And you're not supposed to enter the gym if you cannot produce your vaccination card. Well, if somebody has equal immunity because they have natural immunity from having survived the disease, it baffles me as to why they couldn't walk in the gym, because they're just as immune as me, who has had the shot and not had the disease. So that's just a frustration to hear people speaking of. Do you hear any discussion at the state level of accommodating that concern?
There are a few things that exist currently that do have sort of those considerations in some of the serial testing requirements, where they don't require additional testing for those first 90 days after your infection that the state has in some of the state health officer orders that have come out. But I don't have any more insight, unfortunately, on the discussions that are happening at the policy level at the state of making any changes to what they have currently.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Couch?
Thank you. This is not a gotcha question, but you just said something that got me to thinking. We haven't done a study here. You've not done a study on natural immunity, vaccination versus vaccinated and boosted. You haven't done any of those studies, right?
Yes, sir.
Locally. So when you were just speaking of, I thought you said that you had seen, maybe you meant you had seen another study. But flesh this out for me. I thought you said that if you had COVID and it was a severe case, that the natural immunity that you acquired typically would last longer than if you had a mild case. Did you say that?
Yes, there is some information out there on people who we've followed after, not we locally, but at sort of national levels.
That's where I got lost. I was thinking, how do you know that when you have it, if we're not doing our own study? How do you feel about the CDC changing the definition of vaccine so that this shot would meet the definition?
So the definition of fully vaccinated continues to be people who have completed that primary series.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
But the CDC, it's my understanding, because I looked it up, I think I verified this, the definition of the word vaccine was changed so that the shots that people are getting fit the definition of vaccine, because it didn't fit the previous definition.
Supervisor Couch, through the chair. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the change in the definition that has happened, so it's something we need to look up before we respond to.
Good, okay, I would appreciate you looking at what it is now versus, and I don't know the date.
Okay.
But it's been within the last couple of years, I believe. And getting back to us on that.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any other questions for our public health representatives? Seeing none. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other board member announcements or reports? Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to let the board know about, and the public know about, an effort that is underway here in Kern County, because we need a little bit of help as well about this. I received a phone call from Patty Gray, who is a member of the Bakersfield City Council, a fine leader in our community. And she asked me if the county might be interested in joining the city of Bakersfield in finding some decommissioned bulletproof vests to ship to the Ukraine to help those people who are defending themselves against the attack that they're under. And the Sheriff's Department, under the leadership of our sheriff, immediately found a significant number of vests that are available to use for that purpose, that they're willing to donate to this cause. And the city of Bakersfield has found a number of them as well. It's interesting that the difficulty we're encountering is how to get them there. Do we put them in a shipping container but then you don't know where they're going to be when they get unloaded from the container? Is there some military channel that we can follow? A number of inquiries are being made at the same time. I've never sent an email before to the General Counsel for the Ukraine nation in San Francisco, where their Consul General's office is. But I sent one of those now, trying to reach them. I guess what I'm saying is, if anybody knows a way to do that, I'm all ears. We would like to get these to people to help protect them and aid them in their efforts. This isn't an uncommon thing. This has been done before when the Iraq War was going on, and many different examples. But I want to just thank the sheriff, thank our CAO for his help in that regard, and Patty Gray for her starting the ball rolling. And we'll see if we can put something together to help those folks. And I thought you would be interested in hearing about that. Thank you.
We are, and thank you. Okay, I don't see any other requests, so we'll now move on to item 24 under the County Administrative Office. This is a fiscal year 2022-23 budget development report and proposed general fund contribution guideline. I'll turn to our CAO, Ryan Alsop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'd like to ask Ms. Martinez, our Chief Financial Officer, to provide you the presentation today.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We are beginning the annual budget planning process for fiscal year 22-23 by presenting the budget development report and the proposed general fund contribution guideline. When we begin the development of next year's budget, we evaluate 4 areas: state and federal fiscal actions, the county's assessed valuation, property tax, and other discretionary revenue, the known and quantifiable changes in program costs and revenue, and the status of the current year budget and the year-end fund balance. As I noted in the staff report, on January 10, the governor presented his proposed 22-23 state budget, and his proposals include many of the programs he started this year, in addition to several new initiatives that I have listed in the report and in the presentation for you. In addition, over the last 2 years, the federal government has provided significant funding to local governments. Most recently, the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act provides investment in transportation, water, broadband, energy and power, and environmental remediation, just to mention a few. Although there is no direct funding coming to the counties, it is likely the counties will be able to secure funding through federal and state grants. Moving locally, home prices in general continue to increase across the state. For budget development purposes and after discussions with the assessor's office, an increase of 4.45% will be used to provide preliminary projections for next year's assessed valuation. This includes a conservative 3% increase in assessed values for residential and commercial, and 20% increase for oil and gas properties. And for reference, as noted in this chart, last year oil and gas assessments saw a decline of 24%. The net impact for the general fund of this assessed value is an overall increase of $6.2 million in property taxes and $2.3 million in property tax in lieu of vehicle license fees, for a total of $8.5 million more than the current fiscal year. The fire department is expected to collect approximately $4.7 million more than budgeted this year. This increase, once combined with the anticipated increase in sales and other taxes, and a decline in other revenue related to the county-wide cost allocation plans, results in approximately $12.4 million in general fund discretionary revenue more than we budgeted this year. And as you can see in this graph, you see our total. In 2018, our actual collections were 390. We're estimated to be at 393 for the following fiscal year. We did see the increase in 2021 due to a significant increase in one-time funding related to sales tax and a collection that occurred regarding one property tax owner on fiscal year 2021 that related actually to 2019. So pretty much we're seeing our discretionary revenue flat across the last 5 years. Across the state, we have seen an increase in tax collections, and that is great for us as it results in increases in our 91, 2011 realignment, and Proposition 172 sales tax revenue, which will be instrumental to cover cost increases for our public safety departments and the Department of Human Services. Once again, we're challenged with pension cost increases. For fiscal year 22-23, and after the $28.2 million final payment of our 1995 pension bond, we anticipate a reduction of approximately 7.1% in retirement costs for our general members and a 5.56% for safety members, resulting in approximately $26.5 million in savings. However, we must keep in mind that the market performance, recognition of prior losses, and any changes in actuarial assumptions can increase our retirement costs in the future. As I mentioned, one of the things we look at as the status of year-end balances. I presented to your board the mid-year report where I indicated that we would probably have approximately $8 million more in sales tax collections and property tax. Those funds will be used to carry us to the next fiscal year, and we anticipate using approximately $2.1 million of the carry forward to balance the budget in the coming year. We currently have $240 million of designations and reserves available, and this includes our $40 million that we have set aside for contingencies, and that represents approximately 10% of our discretionary revenue. Again, I want to emphasize for a county of our size, we should have at least 16 to 20% of our discretionary revenue. We should look at $80 million. Those resources that we have set aside, your board has put it away for specific purposes. In today's afternoon agenda, your board is going to hopefully approve the use of some of those reserves for the purchase of the crime lab building. We also have our public safety communication system that is in dire need of repair that our general services department is working on. And as part of the staff report, I have included a detail of those reserves and designations for the specific purposes that your board set aside. So as part of the coming budget, we anticipate that the reduction in retirement costs will be sufficient for departments to absorb the cost increases that your board afforded to our employees. Knowing that the retirement savings for our public safety employees is lower than the general employees, we will work with our safety departments to ensure that we mitigate any service level impacts. Our net general fund contribution guideline keeps budgets at the current level and does not seek any reductions. The guideline will provide departments with a preliminary framework to develop a balanced budget for the coming fiscal year. Listed on the slide are some of the adjustments that we did. We anticipate savings in rent for our crime lab that will be used to cover some of the operational costs. We also included additional funding for our sheriff departments to implement some of the DOJ settlement agreement, which includes hiring of additional force sergeants to provide supervision. And out of abundance of caution, we always ask the department for a step-down plan. And this year, we're asking for a 3%. As we develop the budget, we must keep in mind that budgeting is just as much about priorities as it is about dollars. I want to assure you that our departments have spent a lot of time reviewing their mandates, their programs to prioritize our limited resources. The public has the opportunity to comment on our budget today and in the following 3 board meetings that we have scheduled to discuss our next year budget. This concludes my remarks, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Do we have any, first I'll go to the public. Any members of the public that would like to comment on the presentation you just heard? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board. The requested action is to approve the guideline, but I will, of course, entertain any questions or comments.
I'll move the approval of the guideline.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, next we'll return to item 26 that was discussed earlier. This is an item under the district attorney, and this is the proposed addition of 1 coordinator of administrative and legislative analyst position within a DA's office. And so I think what I'll do first is go to Mr. Alsop and ask him if he could provide any comments or clarification on this item, and then, of course, we'll go to the public after that. Mr. Alsop, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I know the district attorney is here herself and members of her staff as well to provide comment. But just from my office's point of view, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on what we know about this. First, it was asserted by a speaker earlier that this is somehow this is county money being sent to the district attorney for her to use for her campaign purposes. That not only would be highly inappropriate, but illegal. So that is, in fact, not happening here. What is happening here is this is a request of the district attorney to fill what she believes is an important position in her department. This is a common job specification and classification all across the county. It's a classification that was approved by the county's Civil Service Commission, and it's utilized in a variety of different business areas, as I said, throughout the county. It's a civil service position. I would only add to that the public affairs needs in really, you could argue, in any department, but particularly in the district attorney's office, given their role in the community, is important, and I believe we would agree that it merits attention. In addition to that, obviously legislative changes, the counties, local governments do get whipsawed by state policies. Whether from, no matter what party they're from, whether they're positive policies or things that impact us negatively, it's important for, we would argue, important for the district attorney's office to have an understanding of how her office is impacted and overall how our law enforcement community is impacted by what seemingly are quite a bit of changes that happen each and every year out of Sacramento. So those are my comments, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions from the board for Mr. Alsop? Okay, seeing none. I'm going to afford the...
I do have a question.
Excuse me, Supervisor Perez.
Pardon me, Chair, and thank you for your indulgence. So, Ryan, did I hear you correctly that what you see proposed by the district attorney today is legal and within the purview of what she can do, one as a department head, but two as an elected official? Do you have any question in your mind about the legality of it?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. And it's consistent. Again, this is a very common job classification that's utilized by a bunch of different departments, and this is merely her request to add a position which frankly we believe is needed in her department.
You hold that position, Ryan?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And as to the concerns of the public about who gets this job or if the process is fair, how do we give them some assurance that this is process is going to be followed like any other process where people have to apply and go through an interview process, and there need to be job qualifications that are clear to the public, I think that would be helpful.
Yes, ma'am, and members of the board, Mr. Chairman. This is a civil service position, and as such, there are a whole slew. I don't want to dive deep into the weeds. There are a lot of weeds with civil service positions, but there is a process that is to be strictly followed in onboarding these positions, and I have no doubt that the district attorney or any number of our department heads do a good job in doing just that.
Appreciate that information. Thank you, Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Supervisor. Okay, I'm not seeing any other requests, and so I'll ask our district attorney, Cynthia Zimmer, to come forward, and if she wants to give any comments on this, then I'll open up to the public. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This, as stated by Mr. Alsop, this is not a political position. And an answer through the board, through the chairman to Ms. Perez, it's not even one of the confidential positions that we're allowed to have, and I think that's the word you were talking about.
Sorry, that's a category that a lot of folks don't understand in the public.
Right.
It's something I benefit from personally, and I don't want to lose. So the fact that elected officials have confidential employees or people that they can work with outside of the structure, I think is uncomfortable for a lot of people, but it is a truth. And we extended it to our sheriff in the last two terms ago. And so those are realities that are uncomfortable, and the public has a right to know that, and you have an opinion about it, and you have a right to organize around that. But we also have the limitations of legality and what is appropriate and not appropriate. Apparently, I misspoke. Thank you for the clarification.
No, but I think it's a good question because many offices do have those. I do have those. This is not one of those, and this is not, I'm not seeking for it to be confidential. I'm not seeking it for it to be at will. This is a civil service position that will go through the county, and the way that it has specifications, specific requirements of what's involved, and it will go through the county. I have a tremendous need for this. We have a lot of crime in Kern County, and the requirements on these individual attorneys with the crime rate is getting more and more cumbersome. The amount of homicides that we had last year and the amount of attention that requires, that we have to have some help and have some of these job tasks within our office go to non-lawyers that we can pay less money to do. And I think this is imperative, this position. We are watching very carefully what's coming out of Sacramento. As I stated earlier, it's daily. And what we try to do is anticipate what we think it's going to be passed before it actually is implemented. And that way we can start encompassing some of the new rules and legislation. Like there was a big law that passed regarding jury selection. And the rules changed dramatically regarding jury selection. We implemented this 6 months before it became effective, so our cases wouldn't be reversed on appeal because those cases would be subject to that. So there's a lot that we have to do now in post-conviction work, and we are trying to be as careful as we can and good stewards of county money. And so this position, we gave it a try. We used to outsource some of this, the job duties of this position, and we discontinued that contract in order to make it better for us and gave it a try with an extra help position, and it has been so effective that we would like to make it a permanent civil service position. So thank you. I don't think I have anything else to add. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Supervisor Perez, did you have an additional question? I saw you punched in and then out. And
Thank you.
Supervisor Couch is also punched in.
I appreciate that, Chairman. You know, I so appreciate that this space is for everybody. And I really mean that, and I feel that we have gotten better at finding a way to communicate issues that we disagree about wholeheartedly. And by that I mean a very broad community that has many, many diverse perspectives. I have tried many methodologies through the years, and to get things done that are important to me, that I think are important to my community and represent what is so important to so many people that I see here, and I know the voices and the families that you represent. And while what I'm going to say is not an answer solution to the reality that we see the world so differently, I would like to say to the gentleman who came here and said we need to try something different and do things differently, I'm with you all the way. Within the structures that we have, to be creative and build relationships. That only comes with listening, communicating, and offering opportunities to bridge the gap. And I would like to say that before this conversation came up, and frankly, before I was aware of it, before it came to my attention that this matter would be on the agenda today, yesterday, I met with our district attorney's number 2, Andrea Kohler, at a small business on the east side. It's an MMA studio that my family are patrons of, that we pay to attend monthly, and our children are in jiu-jitsu. And I've watched a transformation in them that I have never seen any other place. And I wanted to present this to our district attorney's office as a possibility of one place that we can launch together a mentorship program for young boys in our community. Ysidra, you know Leon Duluth. We are working very closely with Leon, Stephen Winters, and the MMA studio, and I've requested the partnership of the district attorney's office because I believe it's really the only way we make sound and sustainable change is to have buy-in from our law enforcement partners to say we can do something differently. And while this doesn't address the issue today, I do want you to know that the district attorney's office was extremely gracious. They are excited about the prospect of it. What it's going to look like, we haven't decided yet, but it is multicultural. It is open to everyone. It's black, white, brown, and every conceivable color of the rainbow. But we are looking very aggressively, astutely at job preparation, skills gap closure, and of course, addressing head-on the reality of trauma within the hood. Right? Trauma actually exists everywhere outside of the hood, but we have some unique nuances and challenges and opportunities, right, to lock arms as a community and say, we can't just keep fighting about this and yelling about it. It doesn't get us very far. We can love our young boys and teach them how to manage their own violence, their own proclivity as boys to want to be aggressive physically. It is a trait amongst boys. We have to help them manage those. And in this particular way in which we are devising opportunities to love, guide, and mentor young boys in this community, we have to be creative about their mental, emotional well-being, as well as actual love from people who are around them, right? And skills gap closure, and a future that is different than the one we know has been an us-them reality for our communities. I share that with you because that makes me hopeful about the future. It makes me hopeful that we can bridge the gap in our understanding of each other, in our incredible jointly shared desire for a healthier, safer community where no one is excluded from opportunities at upward mobility. That is my passion. That is what I've devoted my life to here. That is not necessarily Cindy's passion or her hat, or not necessarily your passion or your hat. It is mine, and I look at all of you as partners in that process. And I want you to know that I received openly and wholeheartedly from the district attorney's office an excitement about a partnership and moving forward together in that vein. And I want to suggest that we do more of that together. And I'd like to even express that opportunity, Cindy, with you, to say that there are so many opportunities in this community to change fundamentally and in a sustainable way, the way we look at each other, the way we treat each other, and the opportunities we provide to each other. My number one partner in mentoring young kids of color, in particular poor kids, is a retired sheriff's deputy, John Money, who really changed my life in some most incredible, meaningful ways, taught me things about mentorship and love, in particular young boys, that totally opened my mind and changed my perspective. He and I don't agree about everything. He's not perfect, I'm not perfect. Cindy's not perfect, you're not perfect. But certainly, There's a better way of doing this than the way that we have done it, which is the constant us versus them, the constant bickering and fighting about what we should be doing. That is not to take away from the merit of your disagreement and your issues with what's on calendar today. That is your right, and I want to hear from you. But I want to tell you that in the background, there is movement being made. There's opportunities being created, and I want to ask your partnership in that. Whatever happens today, I'm constricted by laws and policy and the culture of this board, and I'm going to do what I believe is absolutely right. But beyond that, I'm appreciate your number two being open, being enthusiastic. She has created such hopefulness in this small community by her mere presence and saying, yes, we're open. And that to me is a starting place, and I want to offer that humbly to all of you, regardless of what's on the agenda today, because I think we can do better. And a partnership really is magical. Mike Turnipseed knows that better than anybody is. He and I have worked to transform our high school system and make dual enrollment a reality, in particular for poor kids that can be employed at 18 and hit the ground running, or go pursue their academic dreams, or go immediately into the trades, or go to serve this great country, or become a member of our law enforcement family. These are the things that unite us, and I want to promote that at any opportunity that I have. With today being a legitimate issue that we do have to work through, Cindy, as you know. I want to put that out there to the community, because it's what I hear underlying the passion and the frustration. That's what I hear, and I want to say that I feel like there's a partnership developing in a new way, and I want to continue to promote that and be sensitive about that as we move forward. So I humbly submit those comments to this community. Thank you.
Supervisor Couch?
Thank you. Thank you to our district attorney. I think there's one other thing I want to add, and that's, it's exciting to hear about the partnership that Supervisor Perez just described, but while it's everyone's right to come here and say whatever they want, your integrity and was impugned this morning, and I know you to be someone of high integrity, and I don't think you would ever do what you were accused of going to do. And by the way, you were impugned without citing any facts. It was just things that were heard. We hear that this is going to happen. Well, that's not, that doesn't cut it. And I see that coming more and more. People are coming to the microphone and saying, we hear this about that, and if there are facts, if there are substantiated facts on any type of allegation like that, we are open to hearing them. But I wanted it to be said that what I know of you is that you would never do what you were accused of going to do with this particular position, and I just think that needed to be stated. It hadn't been said here yet today. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any other comments from the board or our district attorney before I go to the public? Okay.
Just the last thing I'd like to say.
Absolutely.
It is my job to be involved in the suppression of crime. That's what the taxpayers and voters like me to do. But I will tell you, based on Supervisor Perez's comments, that most of the employees in my office volunteer to be involved in prevention and intervention efforts, because that is where our heart is to keep kids from getting into crime. So thank you for bringing up, Supervisor Perez, through the board, of our mentoring efforts, but most of the attorneys and many of our clerical staff are involved in nonprofits that we do try very, very hard. When we go to court, we're there to do a job, but in our private time, we also work very hard to help the
I didn't
public.
know that. That's so cool. Thank you, Cindy.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I'll open it up to members of the public that would like to comment. So we had several people to speak to this earlier. I do want to observe our 2-minute time limit just to keep things moving. We do have one more item. And so we'll ask you to state your name and observe our 2-minute time limit.
Nadine Escalante. To Mr. Couch, when I hear things from the community, I bring to this discussion what I hear from the community. And so whether it's not true or true, that's what she would know. You might find her to be highly respectful. I, however, do not, because of a personal issue that she had done against my daughter. So that will never change of my perspective towards Ms. Zimmer. And I've spoken about it quite publicly to the community, and the community agrees with me. So when it comes to this issue of, yes, we do need to have partnership with our community, and it's great that you have county employees volunteering their time. However, I do not work, and I volunteer my time to work with policing issues, education issues, and encouraging our youth in this community to learn a better way of life because of what I did working for the county at probation. So it's great that in the county departments and city departments, you ask this of your employees. However, I don't ask this of my children. I'm teaching them this practice now. First off, I would like to point out to the community members who do not know, it was unethical for you, Mr. Scribner, to give your aunt the opportunity to plead her case for why she wants this position. Clearly in her statement, it is not needed, it's a want. DA Zimmer stated this position is to watch what's happening in the Sacramento area because of the Democratic laws being made and how this is impacting her Republican-viewed district attorney's office. Thus, the title legislative analyst position. However, DA Zimmer stated this position would be for a public information officer. Law enforcement departments have an employee who handles their public information. Who is best suited for a public information position but an existing DA lawyer employed, not a newly appointed individual? So as she states, this is wanting this position. However, being a district attorney, your political party is for your personal time, not while on duty working for all political parties in this county. My concern is using money from the discretionary fund of over $130,000 that could be used towards mental health to help suicidal youth and people struggling with addiction, not incarcerating them.
Ms.
This money could be
Escalante.
used for CPS. I'm sorry.
Yeah, your time has expired, but thank you.
Thank
We
you very
appreciate your
much.
comments.
We would ask that you
Thank you.
guys understand that you guys give everybody else the opportunity to discuss, but you don't give the community. We're here on our own valuable time.
Thank you.
We don't get paid.
Thank you. Any other speakers, please?
Hello again, my name is Yasidra Osby, and I'm going to speak to a few things. Number one, the budgeting. It should have been included with this request, as there was an extra help position that has been going on. You would think that it would have been included in the budget preparation. And again, let's remember that the DA's office received an increase in the budget up to $7 million. The DA made comments that in Sacramento, we have a Democratic supermajority, makes his position partisan. So does HR support Republican Party? And the DA also mentioned that many departments have a public info officer. That's true, however, this position is different. It doesn't mention anything about being a public info officer. It mentions legislative analysis, which is completely different. So I have a question. What will this position do to serve the Kern County constituents? You know, and let's talk about the current impact, you know, not future impact, right? We have the DOJ settlements, we have a lot of lawsuits. Like, we have to focus on things that are happening now. And public engagement is extremely important, and that never happens within the community that I've lived all my life in. We need to engage community. There needs to be a committee of some sort that says, hey, you know what? We're having this conversation to educate you on what's going on in our DA's office, in our county, and that's not happening. Nobody's talking about even creating that. And that is nice to have volunteers, but I also run a community-based organization, and nobody has ever volunteered from your office. And we talk about creating interventions for children. That is amazing, but you need to create interventions for the entire family unit. And let's talk about the top 5 crimes that the DA has been arresting for. They're crimes against poverty, against unhoused people. Sure, there's other crimes that are happening, but the top 5 are all misdemeanor crimes. So let's be honest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, could I get the name of your community-based organization?
It's All of Us or None.
All of Us or None?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I find that on your website?
You can find it on the website. You can find us on all social media platforms.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I see the CAO is punched in. Mr. Alsop, did you want to make a comment now or after public comment? Excuse me.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just thought it was important, and, you know, I realize members of the public might not take a super deep dive on this, but the job spec for this job classification does in fact list media relations and public affairs as duties.
Media relations is not community engagement.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
Sure, can I speak to that?
I'm sorry,
Well, because everybody else gets a second time to rebuttal.
not ever, no, we're going to do one turn per speaker. Thank you.
Esteemed board members, I'm going to try to stick to the subject here. I did hear some comment from this gentleman and from DA Zimmer, which I could finally put a face to the name. We've been reaching out to her office to at least, you know, participate in a conversation about her office, a little transparency, you know, just what's entitled to our community. You know, she voices her concern about, you know, that she is for the community, but you know, I hear him say she identified this as a need, this position. I mean, it was up to her. Community engagement, you know, her office. She says it's not politically motivated, but her actions are politically motivated. She's using her clout, her power to make these steps. You know, stepping back, you know, she's gonna be granted this position. You know, it's apparent. It's apparent that she has her own agenda, but you know, we have to step back and, you know, does this agenda include what she's voicing? You know, the concern for her community. We've asked her to participate. We asked her office to participate in conversations. That hasn't been done. She's going up here saying that she's engaged with different, what organizations? This gentleman here says that, you know, she knows her integrity, you know, her testimony here. Was it genuine? Was it integral? You know, I don't think so. I don't believe so. If you go out and ask the community, they will strongly, you know, be in favor of that. It wasn't genuine. It was not genuine what she came up and said here. Was it genuine that she identified the need of this position? Is it genuine that, you know, the community engagement is there, which that's what she stands for, the community. That's why she's in office. Is this position in the best interest of the community? Is this position in the list of needs of the community in the highly higher level? Come on. I mean, if I say my answers to those questions, it'll be voicing my opinion, you know, and I don't want to do that. I want you to ask yourself that question because you are the ones that are going to make the decision. Is this a need that we need? What other needs are our community asking for? She's claiming that she's for the community. Show me. Show you. She's saying that violence is escalating, crime is escalating. Well, Jay Zimmer, let's try to do something different. What we're doing is not working. It's not working. It's escalating. Let's try to do something. Let's join with the community. Let's see what other counties are doing. Let's look at the data, you know, realistically, not from your perspective or from your agenda. You know, we don't want to interfere with that, but let's try to be a little more open-minded. Let's try to
thank you.
Explore new other avenues.
Sir,
I'm sorry,
your time has expired. And,
I apologize.
Not only that,
I'm
but
trying
we do need you to address the board and not the audience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public speakers? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board. Supervisor Peters.
Thank you, Chairman. Frankly, I've been pretty surprised that this has been such an issue. You know, there's constantly laws coming out from the state of California impacting how we have to address crime, and the district attorney's office trying to stay ahead of that seems like a very natural course of action, you know, trying to just stay informed and abreast of what policies are out there. So again, I've been very surprised by all the attention that this item has drawn. This seems like a fairly routine matter, But that being said, there does seem to be some concern out in the community, and I would welcome any of the speakers here today to either reach out to the district attorney's office or even reach out to my office, and I'd be happy to try and facilitate some of that conversation and try and get whatever concerns there are answered. But again, seemed like a fairly routine thing that I've been very surprised to see all the animosity towards. So with that, I have known our district attorney and her office to be, stand up, and they've done a fantastic job enforcing crime and also advocating for our victims here in our community. So with that, I wanted to make a motion to support this.
Thank you. Supervisor Perez?
Thank you. I think I really appreciate the community coming out and being so passionate and wanting to improve their community. I know you, Cedra, I know your heart. You've been in my home for dinner. I know you. You're my appointee. And I want to continue building with you in this community because you're very special and you're very passionate, and the people that you're surrounded by. And I would like to, Vice Chairman Peters offered himself. I would like to offer myself as a conduit, Cindy, to you and maybe some members of this community if maybe we can have, some private time together where we talk and get to know each other a little bit. I remember Mike Turnipseed, first time he came down to the board about 10 years ago, I was certain that I absolutely hated his guts. And we laugh about that all the time now because I was certain of it. You wouldn't have convinced me otherwise. I'm sure he didn't have a high opinion of me either. But with years of listening, of sitting down and realizing I have one of many perspectives and that there are people who are just as passionate about building this community in a creative way, I've learned a lot. It's been a humbling experience, but it has changed me. I think that we have a lot of room here, Cindy, to grow and to learn. I hope you're open to that. I believe that you are. I know Andrea is, and I am, and I think it's the best that we got. And I'm going to support our district attorney today in her effort to lead in the way she thinks is appropriate. And I want to support our efforts at listening to each other. And I believe that office is going to partner in transforming many, many, many young men's lives and women, young girls too, who are participating as well. But I believe that that is possible, and it's the best I got. So good luck to you in this process, and I hope it improves the operation of your institution. And I hope that it is also, this conversation is the beginning of more understanding of each other, because we are not going to see the world the same way. No two people do, and that is an impossibility. But when we listen, we learn, and we give grace, it just draws us to each other in a way that I think is magic. And so I'm going to second this motion. I'm going to support the district attorney in hope and faith that we're going to move forward in good faith to improve this community together. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. I don't see any other requests to comment. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That takes us to the final item on our agenda for the morning, item 32 under Human Services. This is a report on the results of the 2021 Kern County Cares Canned Food Drive.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Vanessa Frando. I'm an assistant director with the Department of Human Services. I'm here this morning on behalf of Director Dina Murphy, who is the chairperson for the 2021 Kern County Cares Canned Food Drive. As you may recall, during your board's November proclamation, the county's goal was to collect over 100,000 pounds of food for our partners, the Golden Empire Gleaners. I'm here today excited to share that we have exceeded our goal by over 18,000 pounds. Between the 22 county departments and the Scramble for Food golf tournament, we raised a total of 69,673 pounds of food and raised $24,331.64, which in total add up to 118,336 pounds of food. I'd like to give special recognition to a few departments and one person. The department that collected the most food per employee was the Auditor Controller County Clerk's Office, collected 202 pounds per employee in their office. The department that raised the highest amount of food was also the Auditor Controller County Clerk's Office, and they collected $3,085. The department that collected the highest amount of food was the Department of Human Services with a total of 63,693 pounds. I'd also like to give a special thank you and recognition to Doug Landon and his team for organizing the 7th Annual Scramble for Food Golf Tournament. That golf tournament totaled $15,111.64. Earlier this morning, Debbie Powers, the Executive Director for the Golden Empire Gleaners, was with me, but she had a conflict and had to leave a little bit early. But she wanted me to share a few words on her behalf. On behalf of the Golden Empire Gleaners, we want to thank Dina Murphy for her 8 years of chairing the Kern County Cares Food Drive. We appreciate how much Dina personally cared about the Gleaners. The Gleaners plans to kick off the Kern County Cares Food Drive earlier next year and hope that all departments participate once again. Thank you for your generous donations to fill our shelves and provide food to the neediest and our 17 senior SAC locations. That concludes my report for today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask if there are any members of the public that would like to comment on this item. Okay, seeing none, the requested action is to receive and file.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a tremendous effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and second, please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
That brings us to the conclusion of our agenda for this morning. We do have 2 items to consider in closed session, one under the CAO's office, item 48, and one under County Council, item 49. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session. We are adjourned.